What is going on YouTube? Next to TV back here on another video. Before we get into the newest episode of Force 25, I wanted to say something. In the last video, I spoke Japanese twice, and that was because I was conveying something that Hiro had said to the other characters. I rewatched the video after I uploaded it and realized that I hadn't put in any translations at all, so I'm going to fix that now. The first time I spoke Japanese, I said "Nani ga akota," I believe. That means what is going on. The second time I spoke Japanese was "arukanai," which means don't walk. Just wanted to let you guys know, I'm going to make sure that that doesn't happen again. I'm going to make sure I'm mindful about, doing that sort of thing. And without further ado, let's get into the new episode. Clue. Impatience. The chief sits angrily at his desk before pounding his fist on it. His hand making contact with the wood creates a loud thump sound as he sits back in his chair. He's getting impatient. He wants the guy who blew up the station, and he wants him now. Shocker was in Rikers. What if it's all connected? Is what he thinks to himself. Just then, Force 25 walks in. Lance, it's been 2 days since Shocker tried to rob that bank. Please tell me you found a lead about the explosion at the precinct, Chief says desperately. Apparently, there's a criminal locked up in the raft that cut a deal with a corrupt guard to give him communication with Schultz, Annika says before Lance can speak up. Chief shifts his eyes at her, and they widen at this information. Anything else? Chief says as he leans over his desk in anticipation. That's all we got, Lance says. Meanwhile at Rikers, Shocker sits in his cell, in an emptier part of the prison. He's stripped of his Shocker gauntlets and is staring forward at the wall with dead eyes. Just then a guard shows up, clicking his tongue and shaking his head. I let you out, and you fail against a few two-bit heroes that think they're the next Avengers? The guard asks angrily as he presses his hand against the glass. Shocker looks over, seemingly angry at the guard. He stands up and quickly closes the gap between him and the glass within seconds. Schultz slams his head on the glass angrily. They have an Avenger as their leader. Does that sound like a two-bit team? Schultz yells in anger. The guard steps back and shakes his head before beginning to sarcastically chuckle. What? Something funny? Schultz asks. The guard reads Schultz's face and takes a deep inhale before he opens his mouth again to say, I put a lot on the line when I blew up that precinct. I scattered the cops for you, robbed 2 companies, I killed officers for you. But now you're useless to me. Goodbye, Schultz, the guard says loudly as he walks away from Schultz's cell. He shuts off and hears Schultz angrily bang on his glass. This reaction brings a grin to the guard's face until he hears one thing that Schultz says. When I get out of here, I'm coming for your family, Schultz says in a booming voice. This makes the guard pause, but he brushes it off and walks away. This had to have been a traitor. Some rat in the department, maybe, Connor yells in aggravation. Connor throws off his hoodie and sits down on a chair within Lance's living room, breathing heavily. Annika sits next to Lance on the couch and attempts to calm Connor down, but Connor's already too riled up. No, Annika, I'm not going to calm down. Chief helped me turn my life around, and I'm sitting here. He's desperate for answers, and I can't help him, Connor says as he sits up. Lance interjects and tells Connor that yelling at everyone isn't going to solve anything. Connor scoffs and shakes his head. Well, everybody, we want answers, Hiro asks as he raises an eyebrow. The 3 nod their head and Hiro grins. Well, why don't we use our trump card? He says with a shrug. Lance shifts his eyes away from Hiro and narrows them, trying to understand what Hiro means. Annika lets out a sigh and asks what Hiro's point is. Before Hiro can speak up, Lance interjects and tells him what Hiro means. He's saying we should ask Schultz, Lance says in a low voice. Connor thinks to himself and then stands up and says, I'll go. As he walks toward the door, Lance shoots a look at Connor and stands up, walking up to him and putting his hand on Connor's shoulder as if he's telling him to wait. Connor, I'm the leader. I should go, Lance says to Connor. Connor shakes his head with a grim expression and says, No, this is all me. Remember what I said. This is personal. Necessary evil. Connor walks through the cell-decked halls of Rikers prison, every so often glancing over at some of the prisoners in the cells. Some of them he remembers putting away. Here he is, Herman Schultz. The prison guard escorts Seth Connor as he stops in front of Schultz's cell. Schultz turns around and looks at Connor through the glass and laughs to himself. Ha ha ha. Look who's here. The Northeast Soldier, right? Schultz says. Look, I'm not here for small talk. I'm here because a friend of mine thinks you could possibly know about the explosion at the precinct, Connor says flatly. Schultz narrows his eyes and shakes his head. That's a wild presumption, Northeast Soldier. Schultz says as he scratches his nose and sits down in his bed. Not to mention that we know about the corrupt cop giving you communication lines to a criminal in the raft, Connor says with a quiet voice. Schultz's head shoots up and his eyes widen as he looks over at Connor with a face of surprise. Connor nods and speaks again. Yeah, so look. Since 2016, you've committed 3 crimes. Damage of public property, theft of DODC property, and you robbed a bank the other day. Now, I've always been great at math. The first crime will get you 120 days. The second gets you 10 years, and max, and the third will get you up to 20 years, equaling 30. Not to mention your history of arms dealing, which is 50 years at max. So that would add up to 80 years and 120 days in prison, meaning that you wouldn't get out until 2105, which means you'll die in here, Connor says as he slides his hands into his pockets and shrugs his shoulders. Schultz scoffs and looks at Connor. So what you saying, man? He asks. Connor instantly replies again. I'm saying that if you tell the police that there's a corrupt guard in here enabling contact between 2 prisoners, there's a chance that your sentence could be reduced, Connor says as he crosses his arms. Schultz walks toward the glass and asks Connor one thing. How much are we talking? He asks as he stares Connor dead in the eyes. Connor shrugs again, telling him that it's up to the judge, but still encourages the idea. Alright. Looks like we got a deal, Northeast Soldier, Schultz says with a grin. Moments later, Connor, Schultz, and a Rikers guard sit in an interrogation room. Connor stands in the corner, supervising the conversation. So, you're telling me that a trusted guard of Rikers prison has given you communication with a prisoner of the raft. Which guard? The Rikers guard says while sitting in front of Schultz. The guard seems to have a nonchalant tone and doesn't seem to care much about his job. Schultz looks around in what seems to be paranoia. Is this room bugged? Schultz asks. Connor answers instantly with a reassuring, No, Schultz, there's only us 3. Connor tells him as he leans back on the wall. Schultz nods and leans in toward the guard. Dude's named Mackey, he says with a hushed tone. The nonchalant guard suddenly becomes alert at his name. His eyes narrow as he seemingly grits his teeth. Mackey? He asks angrily. Yeah, Schultz replies. The guard stands up aggressively. What else did he do? He shouts. Schultz begins to tell him everything. It was him who blew up the precinct. He stole from the oil companies and then gave me a window to rob the bank to get more for the raft prisoner. Well, we have to figure out who it is, Connor yells as he begins to leave the interrogation room. Connor opens the door and briskly walks past the oncoming guards as he calls Lance. Lance, Schultz just gave us some info. Apparently there was a corrupt guard in Rikers that blew up the precinct, giving Schultz a window for him to rob the bank. The money from the bank was to crowdsource funds for some raft criminal, Connor says. Lance hears everything and his brain starts going crazy. He has to figure out what criminal it is. Lance tells Connor to meet him and the others at the precinct. They have to move and find the corrupt guard.